Hi there. Welcome to episode 12 of At the Catch. I'm happy to have Carl joining us today, who is also known as Beachhead. If there's been one person that people have asked me to interview, it has been Beachhead. So very excited to have you here, Carl.
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me, and welcome to everybody that's watching.
Yeah. So right out of the gate, tell us about the meaning of Beachhead.
Well, I guess that takes me back to where I came from, and that is, I'm originally from Pennsylvania, from the Allentown area, a little town called Catasauqua, and I was there as a kid. My dad was a football coach and a basketball coach, and that kind of got started on athletics. Part of that kind of inspired me. I wanted to do service in the military, so I applied and got into West Point, and after that, did 26 years in the Army as an infantryman. And one of the things, and it's going back to Beachhead, is while I was in there, I did a tour in Korea about 2.5 years, and I was stationed right on the DMZ, about a kilometer away from where the DMZ starts from. And I could, as Sarah Palin said about Russia, she could see Russia from her kitchen. I could see North Korea and the North Korean flag from my bedroom. So I looked out, and that's where I was. But one of the things we got to do was we got to use our own call signs. So I made my call sign Beachhead, and Beachhead because my son at that time was about 8 years old, and he was a big fan of G.I. Joe, and Beachhead was the Ranger in G.I. Joe. So since I had been a Ranger, I'd been at the Ranger school. I went through Ranger school, and I'd been in the cadre there for a couple of years. I took Beachhead as my call sign, basically to make my son happy.
Very good. Well, thank you for your service. That's a long history, and you've continued working in the space. Tell us a little bit about what you do now.
Well, I right now I am on my third career, I guess you could say. I did a full career in the military, basically from the time I started school until the time I retired, was 30 years. From there, I moved on over to what I was working in the last assignment that I had on active duty. And I was working with a humanitarian mine clearing program in Latin America with the organization American States. So they asked me to come over and work with them as the operations guy. And I did that for a few years. And then the fellow that invited me to come over and work with him, he wanted to retire. So I took over the program and was director of the program that cleared landmines from Central America, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru. We did a lot of work with Chile in terms of support, and with Argentina doing some funding support. So that's what I did for the next 20 years or so. And I retired from there back in 2020, 2022, after the pandemic had wound down. And I thought I was all done working. And I had a dinner with some friends from school in Washington, D.C. right after that, about 3 months later, after I'd retired. And he came back and he said, I just got back from Ukraine. They got a big landmine problem there. And do you know anybody that knows anything about landmines? And I just chuckled and said, geez, that's the only thing I've been doing for about the last 25 years. So yeah, I know a little bit about it. I ended up going with him and joining a startup company that works out of Miami called SafePro. And we've been working on the problem in Ukraine and trying to develop a system of using drones and armed with cameras and AI to be able to find landmines on a vast area as fast as possibly can be done. And so that's the work that we've been doing since then. That's what I'm doing right now.
Well, I'm glad this job gives you the flexibility where you still have plenty of time to row each day.
That's very true, and that's one of the benefits. I mean, and that kind of goes back to when did I get started? I got my Ergatta rower I ordered it, I think, in January of 2021 when we were still on the cusp of the COVID pandemic, and I was looking for something to do that was a little bit different. Actually, I was quite familiar with rowing, but not rowing in the sense of using a rower. But my son in high school rowed for a very competitive program here in Virginia at Thomas Jefferson High School. They had an excellent rowing program, and he was on the Heavy 8 boat and rowed in the Stokesbury Regatta in Philadelphia and rowed in the high school nationals and so forth. So he was very active in that for the 4 years that he was in high school. And I thought that was pretty inspiring because he really enjoyed it. I saw the physical benefits that he got from it. He was a football player also, so he got really slimmed down. And even though he was slimmed down, he was still pretty beefy and pretty strong.
Mhm.
And he was one of those key guys in the boat that kept it going. And they did quite well in their competitions. So that kind of inspired me all along to want to get interested in rowing. But I was doing a lot of other things along the way. I was a marathon runner, probably in my 30s and 40s. Ran about a dozen marathons. I did probably more than that in triathlons. I did one Ironman triathlon, which I never want to try and do again. After 15 hours of punishment, I mean, that was enough for me. I was quite satisfied with that. Uh,
Check the box and move on.
yeah, I haven't done the Marathon de Mortar yet, but someday I'll get to that sooner or later. I don't know about this year because I've kind of changed my focus a little bit, trying to get faster as opposed to doing the mega distances. But that's how I got interested in rowing. My daughter said, "Well, you ought to try this thing." I wanted to get a water rower because I bought some equipment we moved into our house, my wife and I, about 10 years ago here in Fredericksburg, moving down from Northern Virginia. And one of the things we wanted to have was a nice gymnasium down in the basement. So we had an elliptical trainer and we had weights and so forth. And I was using all of that equipment, but I really wanted to do something different. And my daughter pointed out to me that Ergatta had kind of a screen and it had different programs. And this was kind of early on. This is March of 2021 when I finally got the rower and got started. And I probably started out like most people, not too slow, but a little bit slow, just trying to feel it out. And then I saw that people were doing 500,000 meters in a month and 600,000 meters in a month. And I said, well, that's a lot, but it doesn't seem like it's that far out of reach. So maybe I'll try to get there. And I kind of worked my way up. And in the first full year, I think I marked off a little bit over 5 million meters in the first year. And I hit the 10 million meter mark right around almost to the day of 2 years that I had the rower. So I hit 10 million. And I think that was a big milestone for me because it kind of said I was watching a lot of guys from behind, I think including Brian Payne at one point. I
Yeah.
said, I got to get by these guys. I got to see if I can do it, if I got anything left in the tank. And I got there. A few people got there a little bit before me, but that's okay. I mean, it's all in the spirit of friendly competition. And then some other guys came on about that time, a little bit before I got to the 10 million mark. Guys like Stick, who's phenomenal. Guy was in his 70s and was just cruising along doing mega distances.
Mhm.
And Keith Keith Schumacher, he's still going great guns. I can think he's up over 27 million now. So I really enjoyed watching those guys. Of course, Shar England, the Scottish princess,
Mhm.
she's been at this for a long time too, and she's phenomenal. For the ladies, I don't think there's anybody that touches her yet. She's way out there. She's getting close to that 20 million mark. So I get inspired by those folks and get inspired by some of the other people that can just do incredible speeds. I just don't know how somebody can do a 500-meter race and do it in the times that people are doing it at, under 120 or so times. Those are incredible average times to do. something like that. I'd be happy if I could even touch that. But lately I've been getting more into the races, and I've had a lot of fun doing that. I know that I'm not going to win against the guys that are up there in that top tier of 10 or 15 guys. Once in a while, I might be able to sneak in when it's an off week and not many people have rode. But I enjoy doing that now, and that's kind of what I've worked for. I think it was toward the end of last year. Well, what I didn't say is I had kind of some periods of time between 2023 after I hit that first 10 million and 2024 that I was actually spent quite a bit of time in Europe, including Ukraine and in Germany and so forth with the business. And, you miss 2 or 3 weeks of rowing, you're almost back to square one, especially when you're 65 or older. You don't have that resilience that you have when you're a little bit younger, but even for younger guys, it can be tough. You feel that soreness come back when you do those first couple workouts. But I slowed down a little bit. And then about the end of last year, we kind of did less traveling and did a lot more work. We're more engaged here in the US with other companies and with the military, trying to get our system more visibility and adopted. But I haven't done so much travel, and that's enabled me to kind of focus a little bit more on rowing again. So kind of for this year, I sort of set a goal that, well, if I can do 500,000 every month for the 12 months, that'll give me 6 million for the year. And that would be a nice goal to have. So that's kind of what I set for this year. But at the same time, I thought, I've been class 4 probably for about 3 years. And I said, that's not exactly progress if you can't get out of that same spot that you've been in for that long. So I said, well, let's see if I can try to do something different and move up a little bit. And it took me a couple of months, but I just kind of buckled down and stayed on it and jumped up. I think I jumped over 3 just like that, and got to class 2. And I've kind of been hanging around in there. I tried to do one calibration myself just to see if I could do it. And I just couldn't quite make that 1 second less time that would have got me into class 1. So I said, well, okay, I'll just take my time and I'll get there when I'm ready. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'd like to make class 1 sometime this year, but I'm not in a hurry right now because I'm happy that I made a big jump for me, kind of in a matter of a couple of months just by staying with it. Now, I'm not sure what's going to happen with travel plans in the future. Hopefully, I'll also get enough time to stay on the rower because that's very important for me. That's my primary workout. But I'd like to do more weight training, but just with working from home and occasionally traveling and all the other things that go on, my day usually starts off with my wife still works. She's a healthcare provider. So she's up pretty early in the morning, heads out and goes to her job, comes back in the evening. So I usually end up getting up early, making breakfast for her. And then I got to kind of do the cleanup around the house, take the dogs out and do their daily things that they got to do and bring them back after a walk. And then I'll sit down at the desk for a while and check my emails and see what work I've got to do. And then, at some point, usually somewhere around 1 or 2 o'clock, if I'm really motivated, I'll get down in the basement and go on the rower for maybe an hour and a half or so. That's usually about my workout time. I like to take in breaks in between, normally because I sweat like a horse. I get drenched on a 15-minute workout. And so I've got to stop pretty regular. I'm only doing workouts probably up to about 40 minutes at the most, because if I don't stop occasionally and wipe myself off, I'll just be drenched. I'll lose it completely. And obviously, drink a little water or a little Gatorade or something with it. But that's kind of what my day is as we go through. I try to work out every day. If I don't get in a workout 28, 29 days out of a month, it's kind of unusual. The only reason I kind of fell behind what my goal is for the year last month. And the reason was I was out doing yard work and I was using a rather sharp instrument and ended up chopping up my index finger on my left hand, fortunately not my right because I'm right-handed, and had to get about 6 stitches to hold it all together. So that kept me from rowing for about 11 or 12 days. And
Yeah.
that's the only reason I've really had a significant miss in about the last 6 or 7 months because of that.
Yeah.
So those things happened.
Let me ask you this: since your son got into rowing on the water, two questions. Have you ever rowed in the water? And does your son use your Ergatta?
My son does not. My son lives in New Jersey. I think he may have a rowing machine of his own up there. He may have a concept too, but he's pretty busy with his job. He's married, and so he hasn't kept up with the rowing. But I'm kind of holding this up at that end. And my daughter also has an Ergatta, and she got on her own at her house.
Okay.
So there've been a couple times I saw somebody had noted that their recoil strap broke recently, and that happened to me several months ago. And that kind of knocked me off the Ergatta for a couple of days because it takes a while to get it because you've got to go to the water rower company
Yeah.
to get it. And they're not in any hurry to ship it to you. It takes maybe 7 days to 10 days to get it. But I went down and I was using my daughter's for about a week so that I could keep up with things. So that's the benefit of having somebody that's a rower that lives close by.
That's good.
Uh,
So after 20 million meters, what other type of issues or wear and tear have you had on your machine, if at all?
well, early on, I think between 5 million and 10 million, just I had some difficulties and things that just started getting loose, and it wasn't anything that I could tighten up. And Ergatta was really great. They replaced basically the whole bottom part of the system, uh, and and I think I got it in 2 or 3 days. So that didn't knock me off of the rower for very long, and it was great that they did that. I was very happy it was still under warranty. I think
Mhm.
because it was in the first 2 years or so,
Yeah.
and I was very pleased with that. So they did a great job with it and got it back to me, the new parts right away, and I put it together immediately and got it up and running.
Mhm.
Uh, but other than that, I haven't had any real difficulty with it at all. It's been great. It's always performed for me. I just got a new from Comcast. This isn't the plug for Comcast, but Comcast was advertising a new internet system, and I replaced my old connection and got one of their new connections, and that has made a world of difference in my connection to the Ergatta. The problem is that I'm up here where I have a little office upstairs off of our bedroom, and on the other side of the house in the basement is where the Ergatta is. So that distance sometimes is a little bit challenging in terms of getting the signal, but that's helped a great deal to make it work better by improving the internet system in the house. And of course, the other thing with the internet system depends on, and Regatta depends on for me, is I've got some speakers that are hooked up to Sirius XM radio. So I am on Sirius XM channel 308 deep tracks all day long when I'm down there on the road. And I don't even know if I'm listening half the time, but if I don't have that background music, I think I lose a little bit.
Okay. I was going to ask you what do you do to kill the time? And if the music's your jam and you do media, you do a little of everything, right? So I prefer to watch documentaries, sports, whatever, and that just kind of kills the time for me. But to each his own.
Yeah, I've done that too, Brian. Because we got a TV down there. I watch documentaries on Netflix and so forth. Or if it's football season, then I'm going to watch football.
So what does the future hold for your Ergatta and your any goals that you have? I mean, I'm not going to say what's your number. You talked about doing 6 million a year. Is that going to be your static
I
goal?
think I think that's for this year. My goal is to keep getting a little bit faster and a little bit faster, even as the age is creeping up there. Now I'm 73, so nobody expects to get too much faster at that age, but I'm doing my best to try and move up the ladder, so to speak, in terms of the speed. But if I can keep up that kind of distance and improve how fast I'm going, I'll be real happy with that. I think I'm kind of maintain that plane of 5 to 6 million in a year. 6 million being the top side of what I'd really like to be able to do, but I'll take 5 million or more if I can do that in a year. That's pretty close to what I've been doing.
Mhm.
Although I hit it a little bit less, like I say, when I was traveling so much. But that's kind of what I would like to keep doing in the future. And I encourage my wife to use it. My wife was signed on with her email address, and I said, "Get that off of there." And I said, "You're Mrs. Beachhead." And then so we changed her username to Mrs. Beachhead, and she liked that. She just chuckled because she's a good sport about everything, and I love her so much. But and she's a good sport about how much time I spend on the Ergatta. It's sometimes it's a little bit, well, when are you going to spend time with me? You're always down there working out. And I said, well, come down and work out with me.
Well, I know you're an inspiration to many, and the fact that you're 73 and you're putting up huge numbers. I mean, I know those of us that are much younger hope that we're able to do a fraction of what you do currently. When I'm 20 years behind you, and I'm just amazed, and it's what I aspire to stay active, so I can do 6 million a year when I'm 70. It's amazing.
Well, I think that's one of the things that keeps me going. It keeps me going with rowing is people have written to me and said how I've kind of been an inspiration to them. And I always chuckle because I'm not sure I'm an inspiration to anybody, but I just try to do what I think I ought to be able to do. And I feel the same way about, the work that I've done over the years and the 3 careers now that I've had and cycled through. I mean, it's been important to me to kind of help to motivate people as best I can. We're all imperfect, and I'm certainly in that category when it comes to having my flaws and my foibles and all of that. But I mean, when people tell you that there's something that you're doing has inspired them, it kind of inspires you yourself again to say, well, if I can be better than I am, then maybe I can inspire more people. And that would be a great thing because there's not enough inspiration, I think, sometimes in life. And anybody that inspires anyone, I'm inspired by a lot of the people that I see rowing. I'm inspired by the people that I work with, the young guys that are developing the AI, for humanitarian purposes that we're doing. The guys that I've worked with throughout Latin America, Iraq, and Ukraine, where I've worked with the D miners, the guys that go out there and actually go and look for the landmines and put their lives at risk every minute that they're out there doing it. That's an inspiration to me. And I think the least I can do is try to be the leader that they deserve uh, when it comes to the work that we're doing. In the same way with the soldiers that I work with over many years, I always try to do that. And one thing I always remember is, and I kind of get a little bit choked up about it, because there was a fellow that I worked with years ago when I was stationed in Bolivia for a year and a half on an unaccompanied tour. And I went down there and I wasn't really happy to go because my son was in high school and I didn't want to pull him out. And uh, it was really kind of tough to do that, to go down there by myself for a year and a half. And a fella came in later. He was a young master sergeant, special forces guy, very inspiring guy, very great shape. He was actually, his father was Bolivian, so he had that connection with the country. And he was married to a high school teacher or to an elementary school teacher. And when I left there, he came up and visited me. He was in Walter Reed Hospital and he had a brain tumor. and he knew that it was inoperable and that he wasn't going to make it, that sooner or later it was going to catch up with him. And he said to me one time, you know what kept me going through all this was when I first got to Bolivia, you said that you didn't really want to go there, you didn't want to be there, but you told me, well, I'm here, I'm going to make the best of it, and I'm going to try and do everything I can to make everything I do go well, do more than what's required, and try and get the job done. And he said, I never forget. That's what he told me. And here's a guy with inoperable cancer telling me that I told him something that long ago made him get through the trials that he knew were going to eventually end with the end of his life. I always remember that, not because I did something great, but because when you're a leader or somebody says you're an inspiration to them, always remember that, because you never know when you're going to say something or do something that somebody's going to remember that's going to be very important to their lives. And, I get a little bit choked up about it because I didn't feel like I deserved it first of all. And second of all, I mean, if you can bring something into anybody's life that makes them get through their trials, I think that's just terrific. And I'm just very happy that I was able to do that in a small way.
Very good. Thanks for sharing. That was great. Well, thank you very much for your service, what you do now, what you've done for our country over the years. And clearly you're an inspiration to people around the world, and you serve as an inspiration for those in the Ergatta community. So keep it up.
Well, yeah, my service is my pleasure. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I enjoyed every minute of it. There were a lot of times when I was crawling through the mud or staying awake for 3 or 4 days at a time without sleeping. But, it was it was a great experience, and I was proud to do it, and always proud to serve my country and serve the great people in our country. And so nobody has to thank me for my service. I think it's in and of itself is enough thanks for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know many people will be thankful that they now know Beachhead. They know what you're all about. They know what makes you tick. Come join us on the Facebook group occasionally. I know you're there ever so often, but you can come make an appearance.
Yeah, I'm kind of a lurker. Once in a while, people will ping on me and I'll have to answer them. But yeah, I'm not a great poster on Facebook.
Well, keep us up to date when you hit class 1, when you hit 30 million, those big milestones.
I'll make an announcement. If I make class 1, I'll make sure I tell everybody and crow it from the rooftops, and because that's kind of the ultimate goal. When you make class 1, it seems like everybody says, well, I've arrived, and then you can chill a little bit. But I'll be happy if I can get there. I'll just keep plugging away at it, and maybe one of these days it'll come through.
Sure it will. All right. Thanks again for your time, Carl. Appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me, Brian, and thanks for anybody that's listening. I hope I didn't bore you too much. I tend to ramble on. One thing I wanted to say is I told my wife I was going to say this because, and this is adding a little bit to it, a little spice to the whole thing, is one thing in the military, we tend to say, when we start rambling on, that we're telling war stories. Doesn't matter if it has anything to do with war, but we call them war stories. In the Navy or the Marines, they call them sea stories, but the Army calls them war stories. And I always have to, a friend of mine, the guy that got me into the drone business and the AI business, by the name of Fred Polk, I'll mention him by name, always says to people, you know what the difference between a fairy tale and a war story is? Obviously you don't. A fairy tale always begins with once upon a time, and pardon my French, but a war story always starts with, this is no bullshit.
Very good. Very good. All right. Thanks again, Carl. And to everyone else,
All right.
Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you on the next episode of At the Catch. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.